Hey, it's Marcus with Rubrik, and I'm just going to walk through a quick demo of the ServiceNow Rubrik custom app here. I'll walk through the demo and I'll add some commentary on what's happening in the background, also, so you can kind of understand what's going on here within the application. Anyways, Hans, you may recognize this homepage here, but this is the instance that you sent us, so thank you for that. We do have the application installed, and then as of this morning, we do have a validated mid server that's configured. And if we take a look here, it's showing up as the top line here. So this is the mid server that we have up and running within our SE lab. It's running on a Linux VM, and it's currently validated. Okay. So for the demo, I typically start out with our dashboard concept. So we have a concept of a dashboard right now. It's an initial concept, and I hope you don't mind, but I did add a custom homepage called the Rubrik dashboard. Feel free to delete it if needed. We can recreate it at a later time, or we can clean this up afterwards as well. So we select the Rubrik dashboard. Now what's happening with the application is it's pulling data about every 5 minutes through outbound REST calls that to the cluster that it's connected to. So about every 5 minutes, pulling this data into ServiceNow tables that are scoped within the application. But anyways, we do have about 4 widgets that are just here for a quick example. We're pulling data about the weekly jobs. So we do have a weekly job summary widget that's showing us how many jobs succeeded versus failed or canceled. It's a typical ServiceNow donut chart here, so we can isolate certain legend values and bring them back. But it's showing us that, hey, we have about almost 12,000 successful jobs, very little failed. We're getting a 99.85% success rate, which is very good. So that's great. Over here on the right, we have some data about SLA membership. It's telling us how many virtual machines are unprotected versus how many are signed into policies and what policies they are. So an SLA domain within Rubrik, typically just a policy about schedule and retention. Okay, so to also demonstrate time series data, we're pulling some time series data from the cluster through our REST interface. So I decided to just demonstrate something simple, so IOPS and throughput, right? So these are the IOPS for the past 6 hours, read and write, as well as throughput in bytes per second in the past 6 hours. And of course, these two will directly correlate with each other here. But again, just a quick dashboard concept. We're adding a lot more reports and visualizations into that as well. So just a heads up there. I typically dive right into the service catalog though, so since we have a category and a lot of our items revolve around self-service, we'll jump right into the category. Just a quick heads up, I didn't want to modify any global parameters, but typically we'll disable the auto preview for service catalog just because our items weren't very well designed for the auto expand preview, so that's our fault. But I didn't want to modify the global values here, so just something that's an aesthetic or cosmetic thing here. Anyways, typically we do have 5 different items. One of them holds the configuration information, so the IP address of the cluster, the mid server that we're using. If they had an existing mid server, we can actually change and select that there, as well as credentials. I'll click into it just to give you a quick, just to show you what it's like. So these are the items configured, as well as the mid server that were configured to push through. Okay, but probably the hot item here is around self-service. Obviously, is file recovery. So let's dive right into that, and I'll kick off a file recovery. So let's say I'm an end user or the service desk, and I want to recover the host file out of my Linux VM. So I have a VM. We have saw this earlier, but called semfaust-linux. I'm going to select that. I'm going to search for the host file. I'm going to tab out of that field, and it's going to start gathering information from the Rubrik cluster. So what it's doing is doing about 3 to 4 outbound REST calls, bringing data back. We're actually prefetching more data than necessary, just for some of the dynamics of the form, as you'll see as it comes back. Heads up, this typically takes anywhere from 15 to 17 seconds, sometimes more, 15 to 18 seconds. Depends on the connection as well. So just a heads up for the demo if you run into that. Okay, so you can see the data came back. We have a list of files to choose from. I want to choose my SE host file, obviously. It's giving us a list of point in times that it's protected at, as well as the size of the file and whether or not it's been archived off in the cloud. So if we select one of these cloud archives, obviously it's going to take a little bit of extra time because it's pulling that data down from either Amazon or Azure. Right. So we also have another view here in case that the list is just too crazy, maybe 50 to 100 snapshots. This is only going to show you the snapshots that have changed within the file system. So in this particular case, across the life cycle or the protection cycle of the file, it's only been modified once. So we have the first version across 15 snapshots, the second across 10. We can restore this and overwrite the original file, or we can stage it in an alternate directory. So I have a restore directory in bar temp, so I'm going to specify that, kick that off. Okay, so typical service catalog. I think I forgot to mention, as of now, these forms do not function properly in the service portal. So I know, unfortunate today, but we're working on service portal versions of those forms. So just a heads up. That's probably an important heads up because the dynamics won't work the same there. Okay, so it looks like it kicked it off successfully. I actually have SSH session open to my Linux VM. We're in var temp restore. We're doing ls. There's nothing in it. So I'm just going to keep a running ls here. Now if we go over to our Rubrik dashboard, we can come in here and see actually it kicked it off here. So in the activity log, I'm going to click on this just to see all activity. We can see for SE mFaust Linux it's at 33%. So it's preparing that file. And I'll kind of move on. I'll kind of leave it restoring. And I'll move on to another item here. So if we continue shopping, we can go to our live mount feature. So let's say we didn't need to recover a file or folder, but we wanted to power up the entire VM at that point in time. And we can do that. So we can power it up, a clone of it that runs directly on the Rubrik device, which basically instantly mounts it. We don't have to copy it off or vmotion it off or anything like that. So let's go ahead and request a live mount. I'm going to do the same thing. Select mFaust Linux. We're going to, again, grab those snapshots. Just a heads up here, again, probably, this one's a little shorter, maybe 10 to 15 seconds. Okay, so it came back. Once in a blue moon, this one doesn't come back. So in case maybe it's pulling some data or it's a little busy, just to keep a heads up that, or a JavaScript console open. Occasionally not occasionally, but very rarely it doesn't come back. So we're working on that. But just a heads up, that happens very rarely. Okay, so we have a list of snapshots that we can choose from here. Again, we can filter out. We have a little calendar widget that we can use to filter out. This is pretty trivial though, so we can select any point in time here. Our live mount has the option to strip out the NICs in case we wanted to change the network config or add a NIC and force DHCP, something like to that matter, for the actual clone. So I'm going to order that up. Okay, we'll wait for that to process. And again, these are generating, it's ServiceNow requests and items here. So okay, so it comes back. Go back to our activity log and let's take a look here. It looks like our file finished and it's performing our live mount for us. So if we go to live mounts, we can see it's mounting. So it's probably powering that up directly on the Rubrik device. If we come in here, we can see our host file is there as well. So we've restored our host file to an alternate directory. Take a look at that host file if we want to. Okay. And already, by the time we're done, our clone is actually powered up and in vCenter. So we can go into vCenter, log into the console, take a look at that VM. Let's say we wanted to run a report on a database from that point in time or something, or validate the backup. We can do that. Okay, let's, I like to clean this up, so I'll unmount this, and it will remove that clone from the vCenter inventory. Okay, so if we continue shopping, we have another SLA item here. It's more of an admin function though, but if we wanted to change the SLA domain membership of a particular VM, we can come in here. And let's say I'm not happy with, something's not right with the schedule on the protection for my VMs. So I can come in here and scroll down a bit, take a look at what SLA is assigned to it. So these are in the gold SLA. This one's unprotected. Probably not a good thing, right? So I can actually select both of them if I wanted to and say, hey, I just want to assign, you know, both of these to the gold domain here. So you can order that up, and it's kind of a mass. If we wanted to make a, you know, a bulk SLA assignment here, we can do that. But that's one thing. More of an admin function again than anything, right? We come over here to Rubrik. We can take a look at the activity. And then we should see something to the effect of changing SLA domains. Anyways, I'll move on here. We'll continue shopping. Now, one of the items that I'll either save this for last or start out with it, depending on the crowd, is working with the existing provisioning scheme and adding Rubrik protection functionality into that. And what I mean by that is typically through an orchestration module, let's say the VMware plugin or the orchestration module, or a customer has their own a provisioning form for VMs. Usually they'll come to us and say, hey, we want a way for our form to specify a Rubrik SLA domain. So in other words, after they provision the VM, we don't have to go into Rubrik and assign an SLA domain separately for that. Now it's very easy through our API. We also support auto protection, where we can inherit an SLA domain from a folder or from a top-level object. But a lot of times they want to give the user the option to customize that or override that, right? So we do have a sample here. Now, at the moment, it used to just clone a template and spin up that VM and then assign that to an SLA domain. But this is more of a talk track, so we just talk around it. Our lab got modified a bit where that script no longer functions, and we're fixing that. But anyways, so we can actually, we want to demonstrate, hey, we can add this drop down where it's showing the SLA domains available, and we can add that to any provisioning form. Again, that's going to require some custom coding. And what I'll do then is I'll instead show them what it's actually doing. So we do have items within the workflow editor, right? So this is more or less kicking off a workflow. Now, that form is kicking off this workflow. The first two items are really the actual provisioning of the VM. We're just cloning a template here, right? So two items here. The other items in the workflow are all items necessary for our SLA domain assignment. So we're going to reach out to Rubrik via REST, refresh vCenter after we provision the VM. We're going to see if that VM's been discovered by the Rubrik cluster yet. Rubrik polls vCenter every now and then to get a list of VMs. If not, we're going to wait. We're going to wait about a minute, and we're going to keep polling. And finally, when it is discovered, we're going to run through a couple items here. So some logging, and then we're going to make that SLA domain assignment from that form value. Now, obviously, this requires customizing their existing provisioning form, and we can come in here to that workflow and append all of these items to that workflow, and then pass it back into the workflow that they need to. So if they want to run custom approvals or business rules and so on. But we do have workflow editor items. We're probably on the way to building an actual pack, right? So an orchestration pack. So where users can actually build their own workflows or admins can build their own workflows. Anyways, that's more of the talk track around provisioning and auto protection, or custom auto protection, I should say. And so that kind of covers that portion of it. That's pretty much it for the demo. We're adding items into the service catalog, for the next release. We're adding some other standard items like email notifications and items around that. Just a little more to talk about internal. If you do want to take a look at all of the code that's been written for this so far, you can just go into Studio. I have it loaded into Studio as Rubrik. And then once you click into Rubrik, you can see all the tables, the forms, and everything else. So you can kind of take a look through that. So yeah, keep in mind we do have Rubrik tables in there. We have scheduled workflows that pull data every 5 minutes or so, as well as the workflows that get kicked off by the service catalog items. Anyways, that's pretty much it. I feel like I'm forgetting a few things, but I think we can cover that on the call tomorrow. And please let me know if you have any questions. All right. Well, thank you very much.